Good morning, everyone, and good evening, good afternoon. I'm Jen Parsons. I'm the Senior Alumni Engagement Manager at UWA. And as people start to join the call, I'll give a brief introduction, and then I'll obviously pass it over to our wonderful moderator this morning. It's a wonderful day here in Perth. It's coming into the spring season of Kambarang, the Noongar season. And I know in North America, we're turning into the fall season. So a bit of a different experience for both of us as I'm sitting in shorts. And I got out my Canadian mug this morning. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the West Coast of North America. I'm from Vancouver. So we get everywhere. We're everywhere. We're in Australia. So it is a tradition of the University of Western Australia to acknowledge the custodians and traditional owners of the land on which our campuses are located. So I want to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional owners of the land on the beautiful campus we are situated. The Whadjuk Noongar people remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land and continue to practice their values, languages, beliefs, and knowledge. And a big acknowledgement also to all the traditional owners of the lands you're on this morning and this afternoon. I welcome you to this webinar, a space for you to connect with your university while we recognize the impact that our graduates living and working in North America and the Americas are making in the front of the AI revolution. Please add your questions to the Q&A box below at any moment throughout the conversation. At the end of the panel discussion, we will facilitate a Q&A session to answer your questions. For now, we hope you enjoy this online experience with an amazing panel of graduates. I will now turn things over to Dr. James Kelly, an international leadership author, consultant, and the leader of the UWA USA Alumni Network. And I've been on a few of James's panels before, so I think you're in very capable hands and you'll have a fun experience. So I will moderate this morning. So James, over to you.
Jen, thank you so much. And I want to start off by saying, Jen, I actually officially last week became a Canadian citizen. So I am also Canadian and an American citizen at this point. So
I will send you a mug. I'll send you, this is the Tim Hortons mug right here.
So thank you so much, Jen, for this opportunity and UWA alumni. I'm really excited when I do these because every single time I get to meet incredible human beings from around the world as part of the UWA community. And on behalf of the UWA Americas, thank you, both Matt and Arnina. So quickly, I'm going to introduce these two and let them dive deep into their world. But today, we're really talking about AI, the world of AI, where it's at today, what you can do today, and where it's really going tomorrow. So let me first introduce Arnina Moore Bay. Did I get that right? I should have asked you before we started. Is that correct? Your mic is not quite working, so I'll come back to you really quick. And I probably set you up for failure when I told. There you go.
Yeah, I know. Right. Awesome. Just asked me to change my microphone. Is this better? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Bea.
Bea. Sorry. Thank you. So Arnina is a legend. Arnina, by the way, is the founder of a startup called A Good Life. It's a career coaching AI startup. Arnina, let's start with you, and I'm going to move over to Matt. Give me the 10,000-foot view of really where you've come from and how you landed in Canada, which you're moving to San Fran, but just kind of share with the audience your journey to today.
Sure. Sure. So I was born in China, and I grew up in Australia and studied law and commerce at the University of Western Australia. For the last 8 years, I was living abroad in the UK, and I've just moved back to Australia recently in the last few months to have a baby. So my baby is now 8 weeks old. We're right in the thick of it.
Yay!
Yeah. So this is a nice change of pace, I guess. Yeah, exactly. So we were talking about this earlier, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Going into university, so I chose law and commerce, which is a very broad career. The degree, and then after that I didn't know what I wanted to do again, so I went to management consulting, another very broad career path, and then eventually I did want to go into entrepreneurism, And I just wanted, but I wanted to figure out like what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure. And then eventually at some point, I love my path to management consulting. It was really stimulating. It was like the white picket fence career, but at some point, I realized I wasn't just wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't like as happy as I thought I would be at this point of my like career ladder climbing journey. And so I really started thinking, okay, what's next for me? And then through that, got into career coaching, and that I really asked like questions to myself what I should do next, experiment a little, prototyped. And through that, one of the things I was interested in was personal development. And so I started becoming a life coach myself. Did a really good course. I was really impressed by the training. I thought, wow, anybody can be taught to be a life coach. They really break it down. It was like the best training I've ever been to, actually. And yeah.
If anyone checks you out on LinkedIn and you say that, they're gonna be like, "Wow, she went to a lot of places, and that was the best one." Because there's some good ones in your repertoire of a university life.
Yeah, and this was done during COVID, and it was purely virtual, and I was just so impressed by them. Anyway, this was early 2023, and this is around the time that ChatGPT started getting really big. And then I was playing with that and figuring that out, and I thought, hey, what if I taught ChatGPT to be a coach in the same way that I was being taught to be a coach? Could it be a good, would it be able to do the job? And it did a lot better than I thought it would. It was actually excellent. And then I thought, wow, instead of me becoming a life coach, what if I just 10, like a million X the impact, right? Like really scale it by using a AI agent instead. And so that's how I became, I started A Good Life, and was the idea really to scale coaching and make it more accessible to many people.
Thank you so much. All right. Now, the other distinguished guest here, who is by far an overachiever compared to myself, is Matt Sinclair. He's the director of Azure's AI go-to-market strategy at a small company you may not have heard of, but just in case, called Microsoft. And I mean, Matt, looking at you, I would say you've been on a rocket ship in your career pretty early on. Again, I have to shave regularly, less so for you. So can you quickly just share how your journey from UWA got you to here in this AI world, this revolution that we're in?
100%. Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. So my journey has been a bit of a wayward one, I guess. Like we jumped through a lot of different approaches to my career, but it started off at UWA when I started and completed a Bachelor of Engineering in Mechatronics. At the time, I was super inspired by Iron Man, the movie, and I was like, I want to go build stuff, and I want to like do the electronics and the mechanical side of things and the software. I just want to like build cool things. That's like the thing that really gave me energy in life. So I did my bachelor's degree at UWA. I finished at UWA in 2014, and I started the graduate program at Telstra, where I joined their chief technology office as a technology specialist, basically prototyping new technology. We'd work with researchers, we'd build the tech, we'd put like commercialization proposals to the board, all this sort of exciting stuff. And then one day they were like, hey, Matt, this Internet of Things thing is getting really interesting. You're the only one here with a mechanical degree and an electronics degree. Can you just like go figure that out? Well, that journey then led me to Microsoft, where I ran their Internet of Things commercial business for about 2 years. And then this little thing called AI was just like bubbling around. This must have been 2018. And they said, Matt, you take it. Like you just go deal with sort of the emerging businesses. So I built the Australian Microsoft business for AI. And then about 4 years ago, I was lucky enough to have a career opportunity here in Seattle, where I took over just sort of leading some of the business portfolio for our AI products. And then about 2.5 years ago, took over leading the commercial strategy. So my team's responsible for basically taking all the exciting things that engineers building and developing our go-to-market strategy globally. And so, you know, you may have heard of OpenAI and Azure OpenAI, and my team helped launch that from the Microsoft side. And so that's where I landed today. So I've been in Seattle as of 2 years and just got a puppy 6 months ago. So I think we're stuck here for a little bit longer.
Yeah, you're locked in. You're just pre-working the children angle. Puppies are a great ramp up right there. And just quickly for the audience, you know, I've had a lot of changes in my life since we last spoke last year. I'm now also in AI, so there's a commonality here. And as you know, we usually have at least 3 guests and myself just bantering back and forth. I'm going to be acting in both roles here a little bit today, kind of sharing and bantering, so forth and so on. But I am now the CEO of Entwine, and Entwine really is an app/microsite that allows any event or marketing owner to direct, capture, curate, and produce shareable multi-perspective media on demand. So at any event they're at. So we're all using AI in their different ways. And I think this is what makes this conversation really interesting, is that we're all looking at it from different lenses as we go. So let's dive in. I'm going to start kind of firing a question at Matt first, and then bring our Nina in as we go. So Matt, I'm really curious, as you've dug your claws into this, what are the industries that you think will be most dramatically just transformed by AI in the next 5 years? I mean, in 10 years, I think we're all part of some sort of ecosystem we plug our brains into, and we upload things like the Matrix. But in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I'm going to give the cheat answer, and then I'm going to give the more detailed answer. So the cheat answer is there is no industry that isn't going to be disrupted by generative AI. And I won't sort of throw too many Microsoft facts out and things like that, but there's 60,000 organizations globally in production with Microsoft Azure AI today as of last quarterly earnings. And so like every single industry and every single geography is having some level of impact. What is the difference between them is the pace at which they're adopting the tech and transforming. For example, financial services industries were some of the quickest to jump on generative AI technology because of the competitive advantage that they gain in analyzing large amounts of data. Legal organizations are jumping on it very quickly because they have vast amounts of knowledge they need to just reason over, that they need to make decisions upon. Some of the more regulated industries, though financial services is quite regulated, like healthcare, are going to be a little slower. They're kind of testing, they're experimenting, and really there's restrictions around how quickly they can move. Education is the other one that we see as people kind of chomping at the bit, but different laws and different regulations having an impact there. So, for example, in the United Arab Emirates, they released a nationwide tutor powered by generative AI about 6 months after ChatGPT was released. Whereas I know in some states in Australia, they were banning it in schools. And so you see this high variability, but overall, there's not a single industry that won't be transformed in the next 5 years. It's just how quickly will it happen.
Can I say, having lived 4 years in the Middle East, from 16 to 20, that does not surprise me one iota. That something cool comes and they just jump right on it and try to implement it across society.
Yeah. And genuine impact too. Yeah, not superficial, like genuine impact with it. Yeah.
I believe it. One quick follow-on question. I'm gonna pivot because I think we can really dive down into specificities with Arnina. I have Arnina's name written on the top of my paper, so I don't say Armina every time. So I'm like Arnina. I have to stare at it every time, make sure I don't go to my default mode. So Matt, when you talk about that, initially when Gen AI opened, when OpenAI launched their product, it felt to me that everything was just a wrapper with an LLM model. Are you seeing a fast transfer to more agentic perspectives and agents working with agents to do jobs that are really either supplanting or supporting, depending on where you fall on the coin?
Yeah, this is a great question, James. You have to time keep me here so I don't go on too long. I'm going to try and be succinct. But yes, the initial use cases were, actually the innovation that happened with ChatGPT was there was a natural language interface over the top of the model, as opposed to the previous decades of machine learning where you needed Python and notebooks and that to interact with it. This made it more accessible. You then saw this explosion of people going, I can just add my own wrapper around it and not do anything to the underlying model. And that's had a significant impact. But as the models get more powerful, as they get more capable, they're moving into the next evolution of types of use cases. And this is where agents come in. And for those who aren't quite familiar with the concept of agents, we're basically going from sort of passive applications that are just spitting out the LLM response into things that will take action on behalf of users. And then you start seeing multi-agents where they start interacting with each other. The technology's lagged a little bit with that. The non-deterministic nature of LLMs means that if you have, agents that are only 0.9% accurate and you multiply it up, you get, drastic reductions in accuracy on the long end. But, new models like O1 that can, from OpenAI, which can do complex reasoning, kind of think through the steps, the ability to integrate actions into the model. This is the moment we're in now. And so you'll hear a lot about agents if you've not already. And that really is sort of the next wave. And that's taking action on behalf of the user without user intervention to ultimately help us do more. So that's my quick.
Yeah, and I would say for us at Entwine, that's actually a really big part of our product is having 3 separate agents work together. And actually a fourth one is like the parent agent. making sure the other three are acting in the way they're supposed to. You know, the vision is that, to your point, you want the agent to do the work that you don't have to think about because it can do it better, faster, and easier, right? And so that's how we think about the agentic approach. Now moving and shifting, I think we probably could dive really deep into that, because I think that's a really fascinating direction. But I want to bring Arnina into this and really her expertise, because Arnina is getting in the ground and the practical side of the application. So Arnina, how is AI changing the landscape of career coaching and professional development on its whole? And for the audience to know, my last startup was an HR technology that objectively measured soft skills. So I'll have thoughts on this as well, Arnina. So I welcome to have this dialogue with you. So how are you seeing the landscape shift?
Yeah, perfect. So I think of career coaching as two parts, right? First, you have the tactical part, which is how do I actually get this job once I decide on the job I want to do? And the second would be the strategic part, which is, do I even want this job? Is this the right job for me? So going to the first part, which is the tactical skills, we're seeing really cool things happen, right? So a lot of players out there are helping users with updating their resumes, or like just writing cover letters for them, which are very specific to the job applications which are out there. Or there's even like a Chrome extension where it just applies for jobs for you. Just click on it. And there are really cool things where you say, okay, help me practice my interview questions, and you can put the job description, and then you can have a face-to-face conversation with help with that. So that's really good. And there's really cool things happening in that space. In terms of the bigger question of what do I actually want to do? Do I actually want this job in the first place? That's where we focus on at A Good Life. And this is more of an intersection between life coaching and career coaching. And at that point, I think what AI can really help with is really help with the introspection part. So often historically, when you did these things, you either had to pay for a career coach, which is quite expensive, or read a book. And then when you get to the exercise part, you just skip the exercise and you go on to the next section. You just finish the book, but you don't necessarily do the exercises. And where AI is really helpful with that is it can act as a thought partner. So what we do is you give it some information about yourself, some context, like this is my personality, these are my strengths, this is my background. And it's very good at giving you a first go. Like actually based on that, these are the things which are really important to you. Have you considered these options? And then it can be a thought partner, just iterate with you, taking you through that.
Do you see like if me, I have like a line of sight, right? And I see that the sun is like literally setting right in my eyes. This is gonna be awesome for the next 25 minutes. I'm being blinded, cornea issues. But do you see in this particular segment, like we talk about education, and the UAE is a great example of like every kid's gonna have their own little agent that kind of hangs out with them and helps them develop. That's kind of my vision of it. Do you see the same thing in the career coaching aspect, where they have their little agent or their little assistant, if you will, that is AI driven, that is there for the resources and direction, and really like probably like to your point, a coach that will help them kind of move through? Or do you see there are people are going to still want the human side of it, and so there'll be a blend?
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? In terms of the AI side of it, it depends on the person, in that some people actually prefer having the anonymity of an AI, so they feel like they can share. Whereas for some other people, they actually are scared about the data considerations of this, and so they would actually prefer to talk to a human. So it depends on the person. Maybe that's generation specific as well, but it differs. And the second point, what we're seeing actually is even if there's an AI who can do everything perfectly, right? Like it acts as a human, you can't tell the difference. The difference is accountability. So when you have a human coach who you have a meeting with, it's in the diary, it's next Tuesday. Sometimes you won't do anything until the night before, and you're like, oh no, I had this meeting, so I'm gonna have to do it, right? And if it's with an AI, you might just, skip next. I can do it whenever, so I'm never going to do it. So this accountability part is something that we find is really helpful with a human coach. And of course, right now, AI is not at the level where it can replicate what a human coach does yet. It can do a lot, but it's not quite there. And so to overcome that, what we've done is a hybrid model for now, where the users do like, they do the online platform first, and then they come back and the coach kind of holds them accountable and talks through any issues they might have come across. So that's what's working. Maybe
So the
eventually
hybrid model.
the hybrid model. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You
So
said something that was
yeah.
really you said something that was really interesting around there's a certain segment that's kind of worried about the data, right? Is that and so Matt, I kind of want to pivot that back to you on that topic. Like, how is, you know, so when I put stuff in ChatGPT and I don't want it to go in the model, I say, hey, don't put this in the model, right? Now it still may do it. I have no idea. It tells me it doesn't, so it makes me feel better about myself. But like, is that a real concern from the personal data perspective going into the model?
So the data concerns around generative AI have actually, they're just accentuated data concerns that have existed this entire time, right? Like when you've put your information into a system, unless it's like a reputable company that has like terms and conditions and trust, like you don't know what they're doing with that data. Same deal with an LLM. There's like more people are putting more confidential data into LLMs. And if you're working with an untrustworthy company, it's not the LLM that's doing the problem. It's whatever they're doing with the data on the back end, which could potentially be training additional models. And so this has certainly been something that has surfaced as a front of mind consideration for consumers, for people out in the world. But it does come back down to it's the same data concerns we should have been having for the past 10, 15 years. And, particularly with the prevalence of generative AI applications, like there's so many free ones out there, right? It's simple, like similar to other free software. They're monetizing your data, or they're selling you ads, whatever it is. It's no different to generative AI applications. And so working with the trustworthy organizations, being conscious about what you are putting into LLMs for organizations you're not aware of. It's super important. There's this whole other side of thing about data to train the models that we don't, we can go into that separately. But yeah, it's more just surfacing the top of mind issues we should have had around data privacy for the previous years.
Yeah, and I asked that question really from Arnina's perspective of like that's an objection, sorry, that she has to deal with probably with her product, and that's why I was really interested of how Arnina can sort of looking for can have tools at her tip of her tongue to share with her clients like, hey, this is how it's really happening, this is what's not happening. So I really think the data conversation is super fascinating, especially in and I don't know your guys' generation, but my generation, I'm a Gen Xer. We don't think about it nearly as much as kids. We think about it a lot, but as kids are younger, I feel like they don't think about it at all. Like my kids who are teenagers are like, whatever. Like you already know everything about me already. I don't really care. And in some ways, it feels like that's good for the model, but in other ways, it feels bad for your privacy. And I don't really have a question. That's more of a general statement of data. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's a really interesting psychographic variable for different demographics or age cohorts.
I agree with yourself, James, and with what Arnina was saying, in that we see this societal and cultural lag with the technology, right? Like when you think about like passwords for the internet, right? When the internet first came out, people use the same password forever because they didn't know. They put the password in.
Password 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly. How did you know my password? So the savviness around internet safety, data security, like that took a couple of generations to come through. That took intentional education by organizations. That took, some regulatory updates. I think we see the same thing with LLMs. Like you see, emerging generations use these personalized chatbots, and they're just like sharing all this information with trustworthy organizations. And it's just like the early days of the internet, right? We need to educate, we need to teach, we need to put in compliance and regulatory so that people catch up with the potential risks of putting their data into some of these untrustworthy sources. So it's a big conversation at the moment, and the time frame at which the adoption's happening is also one of the biggest considerations, right? Internet took ages because you need to physically plug things in and roll it out. LLMs are just available on your applications, ready to go today. So we're seeing this accelerated adoption, and the concern is, will awareness and education and regulation catch up to that?
Yeah. Well, and I think, Apple will position themselves as the, anti-data collection as they start rolling out their new models on their phones. They're going to use the compute power there to be efficient, effective. I mean, we really are hitting a new generation. in terms of just technology. And I know every generation says that. Like when the tape player came out from the record player, oh my gosh, this is amazing. When the CD came out, like every generation says that when this new, but this feels as the old wise individual here in this conversation. This feels so different that, you know, I use it every day, 10 to 20 times a day. I use some sort of Gen AI tool myself. My children only use it to summarize things right now. But what they don't realize is that in 3 years, it'll be embedded in everything that will do tasks for them automatically. So that kind of leads me to the next question, Arnina, and I'm really curious, you know, around this. You know, we talked a little bit about this future casting. What's the future look like? But I'd really like to get your perspective on how do you envision AI reshaping the job market in the coming decade? And I'll bring you in, Matt, on the other side of that, and I might have some thoughts there too.
Sure. Yeah, I like your analogy of it's a big step change, right? And I see it as the new internet or the new like instead of a typewriter, instead of writing on paper, like AI will help everybody do what they're doing so much better and faster. And so what we're seeing is okay, so let me start again. So there's a lot of research has been done about how much AI will overtake jobs, like what jobs will not be needed anymore, what jobs will be gone. And the research has concluded that actually the most compensated, highly creative, and highly educated work, that's the work which will be most affected, which is very interesting, right? Because historically we've seen that the more labor-intensive work has been affected. So that's a big problem for us, right? Who graduated from UWA, that's our careers, right? Who's being affected. But what's really interesting is whilst it can, rather than replacing us entirely, I see it as making what we're doing so much better and more efficient, and therefore freeing us up to do more interesting executive level tasks. So I see AI as this really excitable, hardworking intern who you can ask to do a lot of those jobs, but you need to check its work because it hallucinates. You're not sure what it does. You need to give it step-by-step instructions if you want it to be really good at something. You have to train it over time, but once you do that, it will 10x, 100x your productivity, and that's super exciting to see.
And I think the intro. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and sorry, and just on that, I think one thing to really note is it will be very important. That part about checking its work is super important, and that critical thinking aspect. So there was a study done with Ethan Mullick from University of Pennsylvania, and he worked with BCG consultants. And sorry, I used to work at Bain, so he should have worked with Bain consultants.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure there was some inside joke between the Bain and the BCG consultants that was probably really inappropriate for the podcast.
So they worked with 800 BCG consultants, and they gave it all their tasks to do, and almost all the tasks, the BCG consultants who were given the AI to use got to the answer faster, more creative answers, better written, everything was better. So it's like the internet or the word processing. Like I said, it's a tool to make your work better. However, there was one task where they gave where it was something that was it's called the jagged frontier of AI, where, you know, instead of, if you think about what AI can do, it's not even constant what it can do. Some things it's really good at, some things it's really bad at, right? And the only way to know what it's good or bad at is to play with it, so you know. So one of the tasks it gave was outside of the jagged frontier. It was something that AI couldn't do. And the problem was the not just the BCG consultants, but I'm sure everybody kind of gets lazy and they say, oh, well, I asked AI, it's good at all these things, it will be good at this. And so actually on that one task, the consultants who didn't use AI were 87% got it right, whereas the consultants who did use AI, only 65% got it right. So this is the color, this is the, I guess, the risk warning sign, red flag, where whilst it will help you in so many ways, this critical thinking alert has to be on most of the time, all the time, because you have to check what it does, because you never know what you ask it to do that it's not able to do.
So I think, I mean, Matt, you're seeing this in a totally different way because you're working with startups coming into the door all the time and probably pitching you ideas and concepts. Are you seeing, let me ask it differently. Are you concerned for your job in 5 years, 10 years? Or do you think it supplements your job and speeds up their productivity and maybe even gives you time back?
Yeah, certainly more in the productivity camp. I hope my boss would agree in my next performance review that it's not going to replace. No, it's augmentation. Anina's right. Augmentation is the primary use case for the AI at the moment, even in the next 5 years, because there's the speed of technology and what the technology can and will be able to do. But there are other factors at play, like we spoke about before. There is just the societal willingness to accept the technology. There is actually dispersing the technology, the products build process. So like, although the technology may be there, there's still going to be a lag in terms of the impact it will have. Augmentation is the primary scenario at the moment. We continue to see that certainly out for the next 5 years. So I'm not worried about my job. And I want to pick up on something Anina said as well, because how we're seeing the career and job landscape change is around the skill sets that are desired. So Microsoft, we do like this AI in the workforce type report. And we found that the people that were most successful with the AI technology were people with managerial skills, because you delegate tasks and you get the outcomes and you help nudge and guide. And so if you're in a management position and you're used to kind of nudging and directing things, you have the practical skills to be able to interact and get the most out of the AI. But then interns were getting the most out of it because they had this, to our conversation before, just this openness with the model, and they didn't feel silly about asking it questions. And a junior developer that would usually go and pester a senior developer 20 times a day is now pestering an AI and getting better responses. The folks who didn't have the most advantage with it were those who weren't able to delegate the tasks, who weren't able to orchestrate. So I think we'll see a shift in the value of skill sets in certain roles. But certainly like job replacement and loss of jobs and things like that, we will see a transfer, a balance. We will see a displacement of roles. But for my perspective, I'm seeing it's certainly opening up more careers and more opportunities rather than replacing them. And I do think that'll be the trend over the coming years.
Well, and let's take a really, sorry.
So I just wanted to add to Matt. You did say we could jump in, so I cut you off. Sorry, James.
No, jump.
But I love what you said, Matt, about the intern being more open. So my from some friends who's recently recruiting for a developer job, right? And then there's one developer who came in and he said, "Hey, can I use AI?" Because he didn't know how to develop except for using AI. And they said, "Okay, go ahead." And so he did it, and it was not beautiful. It was inelegant. But he did it faster and it worked, right? And they hired him straight away because they said, "Okay, I know you can't do it from scratch, but this makes you better." And so what we're seeing with AI as well is that they're making that increasing the people in the bottom percentile up to above average. So it's moving everyone up. And the more open you are, the more you use it, it just really increases the general ability. It doesn't replace the best, but it really moves the average up.
Yeah, we as I probably noted earlier, short-term memory, but I'm at an accelerator right now. So like probably 75% are doing some sort of AI component of whatever. But what I think is really interesting when we talk about innovation and the process of innovation, you've got like the innovators, you've got the early adopters, you've got the early majority, the late majority. We're still in the innovator phase of this product cycle, of people using it and adopting it. And you can see it because people still only use it in a single dimensional way of give me an idea, write this thing for me. So the complexity of it isn't being realized. But the other point I want to make is when the freezer was created to move ice, it also spurred on a whole entire new industry that wasn't thought of when the ice maker was created. And you can say this again around the internet. When the internet was created, there was a whole set of jobs that were never, ever thought of before that became to the forefront and needed at a high demand. Now, I do think that as a disruption in the job market, I do think that developers will be displaced. You won't need as many to do as much. And the ones that can think more creatively using AI to create and code will outshine those that can just put things together off of a quick repo, going to GitHub. And for those people who are in the coding world, going to GitHub and using an agent there to grab stuff. So I do think there'll be a bit of displacement there, but I also think it will spur on new industries and new sectors and new jobs that we haven't even thought of yet in the next 5 years, which will bring on the next evolution of the employment cycle, if you will. This happens for every single technology innovation. It doesn't matter. Like the car industry. No one knew you needed to make tires, not people to make tires and brakes and things like that. So it happens all the time. All right, this is flying by. I've got a couple more questions before we pivot and open up to the audience. And if there is any questions, please pipe up and please write in the chat function beneath. I will never look at it because I can't do two things at once. So if any of you two see something, please flag it and let me know. All right, so here we go. We're gonna move on to AI and innovation. We keep touching about it. I mean, the whole topic is innovation. So this is kind of a lost leader topic in some ways because this whole thing is innovation. But I wanna think about it from the listener's perspective at this point. And so what advice would you give our listeners looking to better use AI at work and at home? And I think, though, just one point before we dive into that, there was a story you just told, Arnina, about your friend who was hiring a developer, and the developer didn't really know how to do it, so he used Gen AI to do it. I know when I started using it, and this is just a personal anecdote, I actually felt like I was cheating when I started. Like there was a psychological barrier to me writing an email saying, well, that's not my words. And I'd read it and go, well, that gave me the first draft in 5 seconds. That would take me probably 20 minutes to get to. Boy, that feels like a more efficient use of time. And that took me a while. And so when I bring up this future of work, you know, I guess I'd go back to that idea. Like, what advice would you give our listeners looking to better use AI in work? Because some don't use it and some do use it a lot. I'll start with Matt on this one, bring him in first and then circle back around.
So I got a bit of a cheat answer to start off with, and then I'll give a proper answer. The best thing to do
Wait,
is
what is a cheat answer? What does that mean?
Cheat answer is just like a straightforward, like blanket generic answer. Like in my case of this one, like the best way to use AI in your business is to just use AI. Like get experimenting, get learning. Like it's a bit of a cheat answer, a bit of a non-answer, but there's some truth and information behind it. But it's really true. Like we're still learning the value that these tools can have in the workplace. I mean, ChatGPT was released, September 2022. Most of the tooling kind of went big in January 2023 and throughout those few months. That's not that long ago, you know, that's two years. And considering it was just a nothing to everything technology shift, we're still seeing the echoes of that through different tools and processes. So the best way to use it is to use it. And I'm almost betting that if you're in either a mid or a large organization, someone in your company is exploring a tool like ChatGPT, like Microsoft Copilot, like whatever they are out there, and speaking to those and getting access to it and starting learning and testing. The one thing I wouldn't advise is just putting your work data straight into a public chatbot that's not being approved by your organization. I feel like I have a personal responsibility to say, please don't put work data into a publicly available chatbot. Use the tool that's available, you know, within your organization, but just use it and experiment. Just use it and experiment. And some of the things you mentioned, James, around, hey, summarize, like people are only using it for summarization or to extract insights or things like that. Yeah, they're simple use cases, but they're highly impactful. Like that really is where you start learning the value of it. And when you start experimenting or pushing it a little bit more, to Anina's point, you find the edges and you find the limitations and ultimately you find how it works best for you. And that's the kind of state we're in at the moment, particularly as, and I won't prattle on for too much, but you know, you mentioned agents at the start, James. At the moment, we're talking one big model that can do lots of things in an okay way, right? Like eventually we're going to move, and not eventually, like within 12 months, transition to models that are very good at task specific, doing a certain job. That's where we're going to start seeing some of those, you know, specific use cases. But for now, because we have these general models, we need to find limitations. We need to see how they can help us, you know, augment parts of our work. So that's my sort of response to how we use it in the workplace.
And so I think, you know, it's interesting. I'll give you another anecdote. So my wife works for a software company that does solar panel stuff. I'll leave it at that. But she's in the product place or product business, part of the business. And they have a whole entire unit of like 20 people. It's a company of like, I think 2,000 that they embedded Microsoft 365 Copilot. And some of these were software developers. Some of these were admin. Some of these were her in the product space. And after 2 months, There's only 3 of them that were using it. No one else was using it. They couldn't figure out how to use it and embed it. But what was really interesting for her is that she was in a meeting, she transcribed everything using Teams, did all of that. And then essentially what happened is that she went in and said, hey, can you give me the requirements that you see out of this meeting? And she said within literally 30 seconds, it would have taken her 2 hours to do. She had the first draft of requirements, and she had requirements out the door in 30 minutes to whomever she needed to have it to. And when she started seeing those values and benefits of using it in a way that is simple but impactful, it really shifted her thinking about how to use that tool inside the organization as a supplement, not a replacement. So with that note, Arnina, I'd love to bring you in on this conversation here.
Well, if I can just, sorry, Anita, if I can just like make one quick point on that one, because what you've highlighted there, James, is the cultural shift and societal shift that's fueled by the technology shift, right? Like people don't find value in it because they don't know how to use it, or their friends aren't using it. They feel like they're cheating. I'm not, like, I don't know. And so people just go, oh, it's too weird, I'm not going to use it. And so actually the biggest barrier to adoption for individuals or organizations is just the cultural willingness to accept it and experiment and learn and find those pitfalls. So you just highlighted a very good example of, the willingness to learn and experiment. And that anecdote, I bet your partner shared with several of the folks at work, and now they're interested. Now you're creating this cultural change in an organization where the tools start becoming valuable. So sorry, just wanted to highlight that. Sorry, Arnina.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Arnina, if we could be brief, we have one more question that's a must ask, and we've only got about 4 minutes left.
Oh, that's
so
hard.
I'm going to cut
I
you
love this
off.
topic. I love this topic.
I know.
Okay. So first, I'm just gonna skip that and go into it.
Just dive. Just go.
I will. So I'm gonna tell you first some tips on how to better use it, and then I wanted to cover some examples of how to use it. So first in terms of like when to use it. So in terms of how to use it, number 1 tip, tell it what to act like. So the LLMs are trained on very generic data. And if you just ask the question, it will give you generic results. And you're like, you might say, oh, that's crappy, I'm not going to use it, screw that. But actually to get better answers, ask it to act like a expert copywriter. Ask it to act like a lawyer, act like a comedian. For example, you're a go-to-market genius. You're clever and ambitious. When asked to generate ideas for taglines, I want you to come up with ideas that are different from each other, clever and interesting. Don't repeat themes or ideas. Come up with 5 topic sentences for a blog post that are different from each other and make them creative and clever. So with that kind of prompt, you get a much better answer than if you just say come up with taglines, right? So that's my first tip. Tell it what to act like. Second, give it context and data. So like you said, it's an intent. So if it doesn't have context, it won't know enough to give you a better answer. And then third, it's a jagged frontier. So really know what it's good at, what it's not good at, and the only way you can do it is to keep experimenting with it. So some tips. Oh, and another tip: if you tell it to that you're gonna pay it, if you give it an incentive, it gives you better answers. So just try and add it in, add that in at the end, and see what happens.
That's awesome until it connects to your bank account and really takes the money.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it doesn't. And then in terms of when to use it, so summaries are great. Definitely use that, but use it when you're stuck. So sometimes it's the barrier of getting started, right? So just ask it, as you said, come up with a draft or something. And I did that for my bio today. For this panel, just come up with a draft, and then you can edit. You can iterate with it. Use it as a check for something. So for example, I was writing a contract with my coach, and I said, act like a lawyer, review this contract for me. And it was excellent. Use it for highly repetitive tasks. So things you do again and again. And you can say, this is an example of what I've done previously. Can you do it again for me? And it's really good at that. It's extremely good at creative tasks. So it's very good at thinking outside like giving new ideas. And it's good at explaining 101 concepts and activities, which I think a lot of people are using it for, but really know here that you can't necessarily trust it. It's like a Wikipedia, but maybe worse, because it will tell you things in a very convincing way that you think is true, and it might not be. So,
But worse.
yeah. So if you do want to use it for concepts, try use Perplexity, where it has to source where it's getting the data from, rather than like a Chat GPT. But yeah, be careful with things
Those
like
are awesome. Those are awesome like use cases. We have a question that I'm going to ask really quick, and I'll let Matt answer this one. So I'm going to apologize now for completely ruining your name. Rushana. We'll leave it at that because I will totally butcher the last name. The question is, thank you for sharing your insights. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how currently AI tools are helping research and development, specifically in the semiconductor and advanced materials engineering space. This is very specific. And what the future holds in this such field. So this is a very big question that, Matt, you may or may not know, but it's super interesting.
Yes, this is a great question, and I don't know if we have time to go into it all, but I'm going to, I know the question was specifically on semiconductor and advanced materials engineering. I'm going to extrapolate a little to just general R&D, because we see that across everything from like pharmaceuticals, material science, and aerospace. Like there's lots of even in the university and education sector around research, right? And so there's a couple of things. One is LLMs and generative AI are very good at distilling large amounts of information and finding connections between that data set. So we worked with a large pharmaceuticals company who actually have a platform now where they put in all of their internal research, they put all of their external research in, they map that into a graph database, they run a generative AI query that says, hey, I need to produce this type of medication or pharmaceutical. What are the most relevant papers, or where's the next step of innovation based on the papers? And to grab all the papers and say, you should invest time researching in this space. To do that previously, researchers would have had to sit there and like read all these stuff. And that's not to say they won't do that anymore, but on the landscape of things to potentially research is now helping them prioritize where they should invest their time. The other thing it's very good at doing is, and I know that simulation and modeling is sort of like a traditional technology, it doesn't have to be generative AI based, but the ability to simulate circumstances or environments, generate large amounts of synthetic data sets that we didn't have before, it's very good at that as well. And so we see organizations fine-tune models on data sets from their machines or from their different parts of their business to create a model that is very good at generating synthetic data, which they can then use to research or investigate or explore or use to train other models in a process called distillation. So the crux of it comes back to the things we've been talking about: time saving, productivity, etc. It's not yet at the point it can do research, but I mentioned the model before O1, and this is the next wave of models we have, where instead of it responding really quickly, it actually extends the inference runtime, which is the computer way of saying it thinks a little bit longer, right? And so now it can intentionally consider large amounts of data. So offloading questions or thoughts or areas of research to the O1 model will actually help you, again, further productivity, further insights, and help you just take that extra few steps that you would have had to do manually. So I know it was quite a broad answer, but hopefully that helps understand where it's being applied.
And because we don't have any other questions at this point, I actually want to dive into a quick side topic, and then I do have to ask a topic about what advice you would give UWA. We'll pause that for a second. But I think this is a really interesting topic that I'm really curious about, and it's really around the ethical consideration challenge. And I think that this is a really big thing for people, and I think that that will be one of the biggest barriers for mass adoption until there is real understanding ethically of what's happening. Some examples: deep fake, voice cloning. Can you guys hear the dog barking in this place? By the way, there's like a dog. We can't hear it. Oh man, it's so loud in my ears right now. And so these ethical considerations, I think, are really important. And I'm curious, Matt, I would imagine internally there's conversations about this all the time. I can't imagine. Maybe not. Maybe it's like gung ho, we're going to make money. I have no idea. But there has to be,
not the latter.
Yeah. Because there's severe implications to society. Like, we're in election season here in the U.S. Then there's deep fakes. There are all sorts of stuff being flown around. So I'd just like to get your take on it, and at least your editorial around what that really looks like in your world.
Yeah, it is a super important topic, and we all get super jazzed about the things the tech can do. But James, to your point, just as there are an equal amount of good actors trying to do good with the models, there are an equal amount of bad actors trying to do bad stuff with the models as well. And it's a constant game of how the good can update regulations, update model capabilities, you know, restrict leakages of the weights of the model, etc., to try and stay ahead of the bad actors, etc. So there's a couple of things. One is every single organization that I work with, we coach strongly on responsible AI and trustworthy AI standards. If you're going to be deploying an AI technology, you need to do risk assessments. You need to have mitigation strategies. The one I openly talk about is when we released the Bing chatbot, right? And you know, it leaked itself as Sydney and it started like harassing users, things like that's not a good time, right? But internally, we had
Great for PR.
Yeah,
Great for
we
PR.
we had processes in place, we had strategies in place. Within, I think it was 24, maybe it was in less than 48 hours, we pushed out changes to the model to help mitigate against it. And we already had these barriers in place so that even if it kind of broke through them a little bit, it couldn't go completely, like truly off the rails. So there's different guardrails that are the responsibility of the producers of these AI models. Their responsibilities of the people producing products with the AI models. And the biggest thing is having an open conversation about it, right? Like, you know, these bad things happen in the dark. And if we shine a light on it, we discuss them, we talk about what does regulation look like of these models? You know, what should they, shouldn't do? How do we watermark model outputs? How do we provide an industry standard that helps models disclose that it's an AI agent before it talks to a human? This is a very relevant conversation, and there is no answer at the moment, but the important part is a lot of people are having the conversation.
Well, and I was going to say, like, one of the big bets we have with our particular piece of software is within 24 to 48 months, we will want a world of authenticity. We don't know what's real, what's not real. Like, that will just instill distrust across everything. And so it's so essential that we as consumers, users of said tool, which is so valuable, also know what is real, know what is artificially created, and then leave it to us to understand how we want to interpret that. But without that base knowledge, I foresee some really negative consequences. Now, I could go forever in this topic. We got to pivot. One last question, and I got to bring Jen back into this conversation. So as we do in all of these talks, we want to leave a piece of wisdom for people out there in the UWA universe. So what advice would you give UWA alumni, recent graduates, students who are interested in pursuing a career in AI? And I'm going to start with our Nina on this one. Bring your voice in, and then we'll pivot to Matt, and we'll land the plane to Miss Jen.
So in terms of people who want to pursue a career in AI, I feel like there will be no career which does not include AI, as we were saying before, because it's ubiquitous. It's like if you didn't use the internet, if you didn't use a laptop. And I would say the one thing to develop would be critical thinking skills, because often it's so easy to, whilst it can help you become so much better at what you do, there are things where it might take you down a specific thought pattern that you wouldn't have otherwise gone down, or it would just say something which is inaccurate, which unless you were thinking about it, you wouldn't catch, and it would go off in a different direction. So develop critical thinking skills, and when through reading, through asking yourself questions. But I think one practice I would always do is if I'm asking GPT to do something from scratch, I always try to sit down and jot down my answers first. Just 3 points of what I think the answer would be before I look at GPT's answer. And that way, because otherwise you just start thinking in such a closed mindset that you might miss things over here because it's taking you down that one path. So critical thinking skills.
Jen is giving me the warning because her face is on the screen now. So Matt, let's bring your voice into this really quick.
You've got the warning. All right. The quick answer is we're at this point in time where we've basically reinvented electricity, and we're now figuring out where we put electricity into every part of our lives. You don't have to be the creator of electricity. You have to be the people in the refrigeration industry, the cooking industry, whatever, the washing industry, whatever it is, where you apply electricity to your use case. And so the analogy there is no matter what industry you're in, the value you have is not in going building models and not in going and trying to understand how to train LLMs. The value you have is actually your business expertise and your industry expertise, and then doing the basics on AI and learning some of the limitations and capabilities, and then going and applying your industry knowledge to that AI capability. That really is the moment we're in. And so don't worry about being in the AI industry. To what Anina said, everyone's going to be touched AI. Be the one who brings AI into your industry. And that's really where the opportunity is.
And I think those opportunities are endless for the foreseeable future, like just endless, especially as the agentic world becomes very prominent, right?
Yes.
I think that's the big thing. So
that's a whole new way.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stop there and say thank you both, Arnina, and I really appreciate both of you two coming here, talking to us, sharing your thoughts. I'm gonna pass this back over to Jen to land this plane for today's episode.
Oh, thanks, James. And thanks, Matt and Arnina. This has been, I've been making notes, and I'm going to attempt to summarize them. Mind-blowing, really, for someone. We're in the same generation, James. So, and I'm someone who doesn't use AI, obviously, as much as you do, but I've learned a great deal from everyone on this call. I was reflecting really on and this is going to be a little bit mind-blowing for some of our younger listeners, but the first time I was surfing the internet, I can remember where I was and what I was with. I remember the moment like it was yesterday, and this was the 90s, guys. And this, to me, this call has been a very parallel sense of awakening, I'd say, on what's coming. And also, Arnina, I'm a career practitioner too. I've done career coaching and also the career certificate. So I took very big notes on your recommendations and how you see the future of careers. So a bit mind-blowing also, because a lot of sort of the practitioner voice that you have, I haven't heard. So I'm really pleased that you shared that with us today. Matt, you're in Seattle, so one of my favorite cities. Fantastic to hear your words. And obviously, when next time I'm over there, I definitely want to have a coffee. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm really pleased to hear that, because, I think some of this I'm hearing is really rewarding to know that we're practicing, we're prototyping. I think you started the conversation with the word prototyping and you ended the conversation. And I think a lot of this is about thinking about prototyping en masse, and we're going to be learning and obviously addressing that. And the fact that we're talking about it in the sort of the time frame of 12 to 48 months is a bit mind-blowing, because I'm hoping to be traveling at that time overseas, and hopefully there isn't a massive surge of AI while I'm sipping my wine in France. But I'll look forward to that deadline, and you know what I mean, right? So again, just a big thank you to everybody on this call. I also want to thank people from across the different time zones. So basically what we did is we decided to do a little experiment. We decided to see if we could amplify this message broadly. And with 150,000 UWA alumni worldwide, we thought, what a great chance to promote your webinar. So there's people who've dialed in, not only from the United States, Canada. We have people from Brazil, Indonesia, Australia, and the UK. So sorry to those who got up in the middle of the night, but thank you for joining us. Don't forget, wherever you are in the world, please update your details. Obviously, it helps us so we can invite you to in-person events, but you've already learned that we're really pleased to make sure that it stays a bit more virtual for you so you can join on a webinar. Thank you to our team. I know that they've been behind the scenes running this today. If you wanted to reach out to any of us, please do so. And I just really want to say thank you, obviously. James, I want to co-end this with you because you're probably going to be better at summing up. We've got a minute left. So if I was to ask you, your one takeaway in the short minutes we have, what would that be?
Inevitability. No matter what's happening, no matter how far you want to run away from it, no matter how much you want to put your head in the sand, AI is coming, and AI will be a huge partner in your life moving forward if you allow it to be. If you want to fight it, move to the backwoods of Idaho, sorry people in Idaho, and live off the grid, because it's coming. And I think that the audience that listened to this, what I hope they took out of this is the intellectual curiosity, if they haven't had it yet, to go play with it, to go test it, to go explore it. Because I want to kind of end on Arnina's point. It's really about being curious. That's what I think really valued. And Arnina gave some really good points about how to be more curious, more specific in curiosity. But curiosity and AI go together really, really well when you have an intent in mind. And so with that, I just think
Thank
it's
you.
inevitable.
That's wonderful. And we're just really coming up to the 8 o'clock mark in our time zone. And those of you probably heading off, maybe there's some NHL hockey games about to start. Not to be confused with ice hockey, which would be here in Australia. But for those of you going to hockey games, enjoy yourselves. Thank you and have a good evening, good afternoon, good morning.